welcome to the Modern Persian Food Podcast. We're food bloggers Bita Arabian
and Bita Nazem Kelly.
We're here to share with you the rich flavors and fresh ingredients of Persian cooking, how to incorporate them in today's modern lifestyles.
We're excited to introduce you to the flavors, tastes, and techniques we use, and also our own cultural stories and perspectives growing up in the U.S. in a Persian family. Thank you for joining us.
Episode number 1. What is Persian food?
Yay!
I don't know about you, Bita, but I would just love to see Persian food wherever you're coming from, if you're new to it or if you grew up eating it. I would love to have our podcast encourage and motivate you to put it into your regular rotation on a weekly basis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like delicious. Yeah, and not be afraid. It can be so intimidating for some people, even for us like who grew up in Persian families and who have like had the flavors all throughout our lives. It can be pretty intimidating to be like, how do I get that same flavor into other foods or into my menu and my meal plans for my family and for myself, and like how to do it. So it could be intimidating for some people.
Right. I mean, it's so delicious. It's beyond, if I were to explain what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even remember who it was, but I've heard before that it's something like in between Chinese and Indian food. I don't know if you've heard that or if you would call it that. But I mean, it's like the spices aren't so out there.
Right.
You know, like if you don't like spicy food, it's not like that. But at the same time, it's like, well, I guess to me, it's comfort food. I don't know if it's comfort food for me because I grew up eating it.
Yeah.
We all get into food ruts.
Right.
And so to introduce an interesting, delicious, amazing, and healthy type of food, and I think that's where my heart and soul is with it.
Yeah. And to your point, like the ingredients aren't that exotic, aside from a handful of you know, the special lemons or the saffron and some other very unique items. A lot of them are very standard pantry staples or things that you can get from even like your local market, different herbs, turmeric, different spices, things like that. So it's not like it's so exotic that it could be overwhelming for people. Sure, there are special specific ones, but overall, it can be pretty accessible to everybody.
Yeah, good point. We'll have a whole episode on saffron, our royal exclusive spice. But beyond that, you're right. Like cumin, everyone probably more or less has some.
Yeah, absolutely.
Use it for, you know, your Southwest or your Mexican. You know, it can be as easy as adding cinnamon to savory foods. Mm-hmm. I've had friends that put a little cinnamon in there, you know, when they're trying to make our green bean rice. And then they're like, oh my gosh, like, everybody ate this, and I would have never thought to put cinnamon in something that's not sweet. And it's something, I feel like it's those nuances with Persian food that set it apart.
Yeah. So what were some of the foods that you grew up eating?
I grew up in the Midwest in Michigan. My family came so many years ago, not necessarily like traditional to where a lot of Iranian families came around the revolution time. We came before 1970, I think. And, we didn't have a lot of easy access, I guess, to the ingredients. And so I grew up eating it, you know, but a lot of times my mom would do things very creatively, and she's an artist. So I think that I have to thank her for like growing up with the courage to get creative in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, my father was a surgeon, a doctor, and very like health conscious. And so he kind of dictated, and sort of a very strong personality as well, like wanting to be healthy food too. Mm-hmm. I grew up eating a lot of, I mean, we did have Persian food, but a lot of it was like Khoresht Karafs, which is like our celery stew. We had rice a lot, delicious rice. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I remember as a kid that I didn't like super love Khoresht Karafs. It's celery stew with rice, and my mom would make with chicken so that it would be super healthy for my dad. And so that was like one thing that was definitely on regular rotation. Mm-hmm. My mom would definitely step it up a notch when they would entertain, and then she would like pour on the richer, you know, the buttery and the tahdig and the amazing, and that was delicious. And I was always excited when they would be entertaining. And then of course, then when my grandmother was visiting, my mom's mom would come over, and she would make some of my favorites that I still try to like recreate now, like her Fessenjoon, which is a walnut pomegranate rich. Yeah. She did like a saffron chicken that I still try to make in a easier way, and she would make the wrapped grape leaves, the dolma. So I have like really fond memories of my grandmother's cooking. Yeah. What about you? What did you grow up eating?
So I grew up in the Bay Area. I was born in San Francisco and grew up in the Bay Area. And my mom would cook a lot. And my parents would entertain a lot too. So there was always kind of like big food around. We had like special big pots for like cooking for parties. So like obviously rice was like a huge staple. And always, of course, fighting over the tahdig. But definitely mixed rice dishes were kind of very easy for our family. So mixing the rice with like lentils or green beans for like Lubia Polo, or sometimes potatoes for Sib Zamini Polo. We also had like big stews, like Khoresh. I'm a huge fan of Khoresh too, obviously. But like, really incorporating braised meats with like vegetables. So like Khoresht Bademjan, which is like an eggplant stew, which is like simmered with like onions and tomato paste and like meats, either like beef or lamb. You could obviously make it with like chicken and stuff like that too. But I would say growing up, there had a lot of those flavors of the vegetables and in the sauce of the stew simmering away with the meats served with rice. Those were always like big things. I always associate the smell of like sauteed onions in oil, like pièce d'or. Every time I smell that, even when I'm cooking, like it reminds me of like being little and like waking up and you can smell that, like mom's cooking today or something like that, because the smell of it is just so great. And then mixed with like turmeric, which is basically the foundation pretty much of almost all Persian dishes, it feels like. So it was very traditional Persian food growing up. In our family, some like specific dishes that my mom would make that I always like associate a weeknight meal would be khorak. She was basically like cook chicken with broth and turmeric and some potatoes and onions and carrots. That with like rice would be a midweek dinner that my mom would do. And also I always remember, little kebabs she would make, like burgers. My mom would always make the shape of the patties more like oval shaped, as opposed to more round shaped.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I always remember being like so annoyed by that, because I'm like, why can't we just have like a normal hamburger? Why do we have to have like this Persian version of it that has like onions in it and like all these spices in it, which are like delicious and amazing. But growing up, sometimes it had its challenges sometimes to be like, I guess like growing up, there wasn't always this acceptance of diversity sometimes. So it made it a little bit challenging to be like, oh yeah, this is my food, or yeah, what are you eating type of thing. So, but that's something that like, as I've grown up, I really appreciate now, obviously. And now just for fun, I do make like little kebab things, burger patty things, like in oval shapes, just because it just feels comforting to eat it like that with some fresh herbs and pita bread or lavash bread, as opposed to traditional burger.
You bring up some really good points. Like, I just want to bring back what you said about aromas and scents. And it just brings up a memory I have with one of my childhood friends who used to come over to my house, and then she'd tell me that my house had a smell. And I, at the time, I wasn't sure how to take that and what my house has a smell, but then.
Yeah, so self-conscious, I'm sure.
Yeah, and along the lines of what you also said about, wanting a hamburger shaped patty and having it come oval like kebab is like, I think that was, it's like it was hard to be different. And for me, I think that was part of like, I grew up in the Midwest in a difficult time. And for me, I think it's part of why like I somewhat rejected my culture a little bit, including the food, and didn't really have a great appreciation for it until like what for me it was when I went away to college, and then I didn't have it, and when I'd come home and I was like, oh yeah, that smell, oh my goodness, like the rice and the saffron and the onions, the pièce d'or, and that I just started loving it, man. I was like, okay, this is where it's at. And speaking of which, beyond kebab, right, the home foods are not kebab. Persian home food's not necessarily kebab, unless you happen to have someone who loves barbecuing or, but it's a traditional sense, like you said, it's rice and stews. But kebabs are amazing, but they're more like our restaurant food, right? So speaking of restaurant food, I didn't have it growing up, actually. We did not have like any Iranian restaurants in the Midwest, but like out here It's just the promised land, right? Of Iranian food, especially in LA.
Yeah, absolutely. LA and like San Jose area, I feel like there's so many Persian restaurants. There's obviously like spread out like in the city and the North Bay, like throughout the Bay Area. But yeah, Persian restaurants. I mean, I love appetizers at Persian restaurants for sure. Like the Salat Shirazi, which is like the cucumber and tomato onion salad with like lemon juice. That's like always a favorite. Or Maast-o-Khiar, basically like the elephant garlic mixed with like yogurt. They're sold as appetizers, but I actually love them as side dishes more. I love eating that with my rice and my kebabs. And for sure, I agree that like when we go to Persian restaurants, typically as a Persian going to a Persian restaurant, I like to order kebab. Like different type of kebabs. There's like the ground beef kebab, ground beef and lamb on a skewer, charred over like a open flame, charbroiled. Then there's also the chicken with or without bone. So the one with bone is usually like a Cornish game hen. If it's not with bone, then it's just the breast, but marinated in saffron and lemon juice and yogurt sometimes to just get like super tender and delicious. When I go, I like to get kebabs. But I do have to say that there's a Persian restaurant in San Francisco in North Beach that I love, Meatballs. Only on Sundays, on Sunday nights, they have their special, which is bagli polo ba maiche. So it's fava bean rice with dill and braised lamb shank. And oh my God, it's my favorite thing ever. Like that's one of my favorite foods is bagli polo maiche.
Oh my goodness. I'm glad that you brought up Meikade because literally that has been there for so long.
Yeah, I grew up eating there.
You grew up eating there. I went there on dates with my husband, Bob. I mean,
oh, really? Oh, so
yeah,
cute.
North Beach, yeah. And I'm happy to hear that it's still there. Now I want to go support it some more. But for us, we're a little bit more Bay Area. And so for us, we have Shalazar, which is like the staple, amazing.
Yeah, Shalazar is great. And they have that oven, that red oven that they make fresh bread every time to order.
They make their bread. And you gotta get the appetizers. Like you said, for us, how we do it is we get all the appetizers. You gotta order all of them.
Oh, really?
All the yogurt ones, the solid Shirazi, like
yeah.
And then they will bring out tarig. Most people who grew up eating Persian food know what tarig is, but like if you don't know what tarig is, we're going to have a whole episode on it. It's the bottom of the pot delicacy that gets crunchy. Well, so they'll bring it out with a Khoresh on it, which I think is fun because then you get a little Khoresh too. You get some stew on top of your crunchy rice. So they'll usually bring it out with Ghemeh or what's the one that you like with the Sabzi?
Oh, yeah. Sabzi.
Yeah, they'll bring that with the tarig.
Oh, wow.
And of course, you have to get kebab. You have to get kebab. When you go to a restaurant, you have to get kebab.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a vegetarian, then...
They have vegetable skewers.
Yeah. You can get like shish kebab skewers of vegetables, but I feel like a Persian restaurant is about the kebabs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. For me, I personally have like somewhat of digestive issues around some heavy red meats. Like my kids love the kubida. It's like the hamburger of Iranian food. And that's the ground meat kebab. And they called it growing up kubi bear. Oh, it's kubida. Yeah. Kubida is what it's called. They used to call it kubi bear, and they still, we joke around kubi bear. So we have to get some kubi bear, and I can have like a couple bites. I know my limits. But typically I just like juja kebab. It's the very lemon juicy chicken. Or I might get like the salmon, which is always delicious.
Yeah, the salmon's always delicious.
Yeah, they usually put some saffron and lemon juice. And are you hungry yet?
Yeah.
Are you hungry?
I'm always hungry. So I think we talked about some of like our favorite foods. What are some of your other favorite types of Persian food?
I think I like the sours. I like the yellow split pea stew a lot, what we call Ghemeh.
Ghemeh.
I do. And then, like a funny little thing is that they're usually some sort of crispy fries on the top.
Yes.
The whole family loves that. And our whole family really, really loves Lubia Polo, the green bean rice.
Yeah.
I think those are our favorites. What about you?
I love Fessenjoon too. You brought it up earlier. Fessenjoon with like the ground walnuts and pomegranate molasses and like stewed. So like all the natural oils of the walnuts come out. And I don't actually really care what kind of meat is served with it. I just love the like sweet and tartness of that stew that you serve over rice. So I really love that. Actually like you could actually do it with like duck too. That's a favorite of mine. Obviously tadik, the bottom of the pot, crispy with saffron. essentially it's like Persian rice is like long grain. It was like jokingly like the mother-in-laws would evaluate their daughter-in-laws or future daughter-in-laws with like, how do they cook the rice, how well. And it's really an art. I mean, it takes time. It takes time to like practice until you get it like perfectly. But even when you don't get it perfectly, it's still pretty good. But the tahdig part, I love bread tahdig and I love slices of potato tahdig a lot too. What else do I like? I love the fresh herbs that we'll serve with our rich stews and like raw onion. So we'll like have like, like Sabzi Khordan, which is basically like fresh herbs, mint, parsley, tarragon, whatever, soft herbs. Then you have it on the table with like maybe some like radishes or green onion. And then having that like on the side as kind of like a accoutrement to like the main meal. Those are definitely some favorites. I also love like okra stew, or the like rich tomato sauce based stews. Like we talked about eggplant that has like fried eggplant. But this one is like with like fried okra. And I'm like a big fan of okra.
I have an okra recipe on my site. So
you do?
I do. I'll share it with you.
Yeah, that sounds great. But, also like favorite is Lubia Polo. And if we were going to talk about like some food that like I serve to my family and that we have at home, Lubia Polo sounds like you grew up eating it too. Lubia Polo is basically just like cut green beans into like 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters size pieces, fried with onions and with whatever meat of choice that you're choosing with it. And it's folded into the rice with turmeric. And then kind of like it has a little bit of variation. You could have a little cumin in there. You can actually put a little curry powder in there, and it cooks with the rice. And that's just like a family favorite. Like my kids will eat it. So I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old doesn't really like the green beans in there. So if I pick out the green beans, he'll eat it. But my 5-year-old loves it. And I personally love it with yogurt, plain yogurt. I don't even always have Greek yogurt. I'll just have like regular yogurt. So Lubia Polo is definitely a favorite for us. Another thing that we eat a lot, that I make a lot, is kuku sabzi. And I play around with kuku sabzi. So kuku is basically like a frittata, essentially. I don't use so many eggs. Like if I'm making like one regular pan of it, I'll use like about just like 4 eggs. And my secret thing that I do with it is I use frozen spinach. Which is like such a great lifesaver. So I'll use frozen spinach. I usually have fresh herbs, so like a handful of cilantro and like a handful of parsley. And then I'll chop that up and mix it with the thawed spinach. And also what I do lately is I'll put a spoonful of dried mint and a spoonful of dried dill that I just have out of my pantry. And I throw that all in there with like a tablespoon of flour, and with the 4 eggs, mix it up, and I'll like fry it in a pan. I'll basically put it in a saucepan and fry it. But what I do sometimes is put it in the oven to bake it, to use less oil. But what I was going to say is I play around with the recipe a little bit sometimes because I want to add some carbs to it. So sometimes I'll put like half a cup of like cooked brown rice in it. Or sometimes if I have some sort of small pasta, I'll put that in there sometimes too, just to like make it a little bit more substantial. So like I don't have to supplement it with like bread or something like that. So if we're eating it, it's kind of just like a easy thing to just pop in your mouth and eat. And it's like so nutritious. Those are some of like my favorite things that we have, like that we eat on a regular basis at home. If I'm entertaining, like you mentioned Khoreshteh Karafs, I think that's a great recipe for people who are just learning how to make Persian food. And it's also like on the easier side of Persian dishes. So like for my non-Persian friends, I would make rice and then I would make Khoreshteh Karafs. I usually have the herbs, so it's usually with like mint and parsley and celery and onion, and then again whatever like meat choice. And I'll add some like either lemon juice, or if I have dried lemon, Persian lemon, limu amani, if I have that, I'll add a little bit of that to it for a little bit of like sourness. But that's what I like to make, like if I'm entertaining and I'm trying to just pull something together.
That's awesome. I have a lot of similar ones that we have on our rotation. I feel like Lubia Polo is also a good one to start with, the green bean rice. And I have a really easy recipe for it that we can put in the show notes.
Yeah, I have one too, but yeah, it depends on what kind of meat you want to use too. What kind of meat do you use in your recipe?
Mine's with chicken. So what we could put both of our links to Lubia Polo.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place to jump in and start. And I agree, most people like it, except for maybe your little one that you pick the green peas out of.
Oh, yeah.
And I love your creative way to make kuku sabzi and make it more filling. I have a recipe for that too that I can include. I make them like in little muffin cups.
Yeah. I do that for like party appetizers.
Yeah.
The little cupcake tins.
Yeah. And the Karafs, I told my childhood story of growing up and not really caring for it. Well, the ironic thing is that now I love it. It's like one of my favorites. And I really like it almost like vegetarian with artichoke. So that's our creative thing to add to it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I saw your post on that.
Yeah. So can share that recipe too. But something good to bring up is that, every family, when it comes to Persian Iranian food, has a different way of making that dish.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then there's like so many variations on the spices, and you just kind of gotta make it your own with the spices. And so that's part of the challenge of trying to like create recipes for Persian food is that, who are you going to ask? Am I going to ask Bita? Am I going to ask my mom? Or my friend. Each one's going to be like a little bit different, but we'll definitely put our easy shortcuts in there.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so great is that it doesn't have to be the exact recipe. Like we're going to make it work with what we have. And especially in times when it's like, in pandemic times or like, I'm too busy or I'm working and I'm just trying to have dinner on the table, but I still want to have those comforting flavors. It's like, it doesn't have to be such a specific recipe. You can like play around. You could see a few different recipes and you can kind of make it your own version of it. And that's what you make in your home. And that's okay because to your point, everyone's families is going to be a little bit different. Someone's going to use tomato paste in their Khoreshteh and some regions like don't. So we got to see what we can do in our lives today so that we can continue to experience the different flavors and share them with our friends and families.
Absolutely. Well, it was really fun to share. So, in every episode, we're going to have a section.
Yeah.
We're going to offer it out to answer your questions. And we're going to call this Ask the Beats.
Yeah, Ask the Beats. So for anyone who's listening out there, like if you have a specific question or a specific topic that you guys want us to talk about, please let us know. modernpersianfood.com is our handle. So you can find us on social media or modernpersianfood.com and send us an email or make a comment and let us know like what are some of the questions that you have and what are some of the topics that you want us to talk about. And we'd love to hear from you. And you know what? We actually didn't even talk about how both of us have the same name.
Yes.
So isn't that random? Bita actually in Farsi means unique, one of a kind. So actually growing up, I didn't know hardly anyone with my name, Bita. And I kind of prided myself on that it meant unique. And then as I got older, I met more. And then now we're co-hosting a podcast together with another Bita. So yeah, we share the same name. We share our passion for Persian food and our family and our friends.
Well, Bita, this has been a pleasure sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, shoot us an email.
So you've been listening to Modern Persian Food with Bita and Beata. Thanks for spending time with us. If you enjoyed what you heard today, consider telling your friends or giving us a good rating on iTunes. You can subscribe to our show for free on your favorite podcasting app or find us online at modernpersianfood.com for recipes and info that we talked about today. Thanks so much. We'd love to hear your thoughts and see you next time.